Welcome back to Quiet Science Journeys. Tonight, you are not here to solve a problem or keep up with the news. You are here to rest. Whatever the day has brought you, whatever small storms have passed through your mind, they can wait outside the quiet space we are about to build together. You might be lying in a dim room right now, with the light softened or turned off completely. Maybe there is a faint glow from a hallway, or the cool hint of night pressing gently at the window. Your body has already done so much today. For the next while, it does not need to do anything at all. There is nowhere you have to go, and nothing you have to keep track of. Far above you, beyond the ceiling, beyond the air, beyond the highest clouds, the planet you live on is wrapped in a pattern of invisible forces. You cannot see it from your bed. You cannot feel it by touch. But it is there, all the time, shaping the way space itself behaves around Earth. You may have seen headlines about solar storms or solar flares, or heard people mention space weather as if the sun were sending out sudden blasts of danger. In our previous journey, we walked slowly through what a solar storm really is and how it interacts with our planet. Tonight, we are going to stay with the same story, but this time we are going to listen from Earth's side. This is not a story about fear or catastrophe. This is a story about a quiet shield, a gentle structure that has been working for billions of years without asking for your attention. It does not need you to believe in it or understand it for it to do its job. It simply keeps working day and night while people go about their lives and while you lie here preparing to sleep. As you listen, you do not have to remember scientific terms or follow every detail. You can treat each idea like a cloud that drifts gently across the sky of your mind. It appears for a moment, it changes shape, and then it moves on. If at any point you feel yourself drifting away, that is not a problem. That is part of what this journey is here to help with. Take a slow breath in through your nose, if that feels comfortable, and let the air expand your chest and your stomach. Hold it very softly for a moment without strain. Then let it flow out again, and notice how your body knows exactly how to do this without you having to supervise anything. Your breathing is an automatic rhythm, a quiet background process you have been relying on since the moment you were born. Earth has quiet background processes as well. Deep inside, far below the ground, there are slow motions of metal and rock that you will never see directly. They do not ask for any recognition. They do not make noise in your daily life. But their movement generates an invisible field around the planet, and that field shapes what happens when the wind from the sun reaches us. For now, you do not need to dive into the details of that process. It is enough to know that such a process exists and that it has been working for a very long time. Just as your heart keeps beating while you sleep, the planet keeps running its own deep machinery, whether anyone is paying attention or not. Let your shoulders soften away from your ears. If you notice that your jaw is tight, you can let your teeth move apart by a tiny distance and feel the muscles around your mouth loosen just a little. If your hands are curled, you can uncurl them and let the fingers rest where gravity wants them to go. There is nothing you need to hold on to right now. If your thoughts are still busy, that is all right. Minds like to wander, to replay, to plan. You do not have to force them to be silent. Instead, You can give them something slow and gentle to wander through. Tonight, that will be the image of Earth as a quiet blue world wrapped in a soft, invisible shield. Picture yourself floating somewhere high above the ground, but still far below the edge of space. Perhaps you are drifting above a sleeping city with tiny threads of light along the streets and softer pools of light where people gather. Perhaps you are over an ocean with only the reflection of the moon and a path of silver stretching across the water. As you drift higher in your imagination, the details begin to blur. Individual buildings, individual trees, individual waves fade into broader patterns. You start to see the curve of the horizon. The air grows thinner, not in a way that makes it hard to breathe here in your bed, but in a way that simply reminds you that the sky has layers and that you are moving through them in thought alone. You do not have to worry about heights. Your body is still heavy where it rests. You are not actually leaving your bed or your room. You are only letting your mind take a gentle elevator of attention upward while your muscles settle more deeply into the surface supporting you. Imagine the clouds below you spread out like slow rivers and lakes of white and gray. Some are lit softly from below by city lights. Others are darker, drifting over oceans and mountains. The planet continues to turn under them, and you glide along effortlessly as if you were suspended in the quiet air. Above you, instead of more blue, the sky is shading toward a deeper color. It moves from the daylight blue, into darker and darker tones until it becomes the almost black of space. Stars begin to appear, not as loud or sharp points, but as small, steady lights scattered across a calm background. You are now in a place where you can see the Earth as a whole. The exact distance does not matter. What matters is the feeling of looking back at a round, glowing world with swirls of white cloud and patches of blue ocean and brown and green land. It is the world that holds all of your days and all of your nights, and yet from here, it looks small enough to rest in the palm of a hand. Around this world, you can begin to imagine something that is not usually visible. You can picture soft lines, like the traces left by iron filings, around a magnet curving out from near the top of the globe, arching through space and bending back down near the bottom. These lines are only a picture in your mind, a way to represent the magnetic field of Earth. But the field itself is real, and it extends far beyond the thin shell of air where planes fly. These imagined lines do not make any sound. They do not glow. They do not push on your body. They are simply a map of the directions in which a very light-charged particle would feel a gentle pull if it happened to drift this way. You can let these lines multiply, not in a chaotic way, but in a smooth, organized pattern, forming nested arcs around the planet. Some curves are close to the Earth, hugging the atmosphere. Others stretch farther out, forming a kind of elongated bubble on the side facing away from the sun. Together, they make a shape in space that quietly defines what it means to be near Earth in terms of magnetism. Somewhere far away, the sun is still shining and still sending out a constant flow of particles. That flow is real, but the distance is enormous. The storms that sometimes happen on the sun do not leap across space like lightning across a room. They travel over millions of kilometers, and by the time they reach Earth, they are interacting with a shield that has been in place since long before any human could give it a name. Your role in this story is not to control any of this. You are not responsible for holding up the sky, or maintaining the magnetosphere, or adjusting the behavior of the solar wind. You are only here to observe gently in your imagination while your body unwinds from the day. If your eyelids feel heavier, you can let them close or half close or stay open in a soft, unfocused way, whatever feels most restful. If you find yourself missing a sentence or two, drifting away, and then returning, you do not have to rewind. This is not a lesson you will be tested on. It is an atmosphere, a background of calm science that can sit beside you as you move toward sleep. In the next part of this journey, we will move a little farther out in imagination to look more clearly at the shape of this invisible shield. For now, it is enough to know that it is there surrounding the world beneath you, and that you can simply rest inside it here in your own quiet corner of the planet. As you rest here, you can keep that faint image of Earth in the back of your mind, like a picture left on a gentle screen. You do not have to hold it tightly. Just knowing it is there is enough. Let us drift a little farther out now slowly, and without effort, as if some quiet current in space were carrying your point of view upward. Your body does not move. Your breathing stays slow and easy. Only your attention glides higher, light and free, while the weight of your body sinks more deeply into whatever is supporting you. Imagine that you have moved to a place far above the planet, high enough that the curve of Earth is clear and graceful. The world below you is not a map on a wall. It is a luminous sphere, softly lit, turning in silence against the dark. You can see oceans first, because they cover so much of the surface. They appear as broad regions of deep blue, sometimes almost black, where the angle of the light is shallow, sometimes a softer bright blue where the sun reaches them more directly. Swirls of white cloud float above the water like slow, shifting brush strokes. Here and there, continents appear in muted greens and browns. Snow and ice hug the poles, a pale cap at the top and bottom of the sphere. Along some coastlines, and on the night side, you can see threads of light where people have gathered in cities, tiny signs of warmth and movement, scattered on a world that from this distance feels very calm. Nothing about this view asks you to hurry. The planet turns at its own patient pace. Clouds drift, shadows move, but all of it is so slow compared to your breathing and your thoughts that you can let yourself relax into the sense that there is no rush at all. As you hover in this imagined orbit, you may notice that the edge of Earth is sharp and smooth. The line where the bright side meets the night side is gentle, not sudden. This line is called the terminator, the boundary between day and night at any given moment. It moves slowly over land and sea as the planet rotates, but from here it looks like a soft band that divides light from shadow. Above the bright side, the sky fades from pale blue near the surface into deeper blues, and finally into a dark so deep that it holds stars. Above the night side, the atmosphere glows faintly as a thin rim lit from behind by the sun. It is almost like seeing a halo around the world, a reminder that the air you breathe is only a delicate layer resting on the surface of something much larger. You can let your attention rest on that thin shell of air for a moment. That is where clouds form, where planes fly, where weather happens. Compared to the size of the planet, it is a fragile veil. Yet for you, lying here in your room, it is enough to keep you warm, to carry sound, to let you breathe. Beyond that veil, the space you are imagining yourself in becomes thinner and quieter. There is still matter, here still traces of gas and particles, but they are spread out. The sky is no longer blue. It is the black of space, dotted with stars and crossed by the gentle glow of the Milky Way. From this vantage point, it is easier to imagine the magnetic field we spoke of earlier, the invisible structure that surrounds Earth. To help your mind picture it, you can think of a simple bar magnet, the kind you might have seen in a classroom or a science book. When iron filings are sprinkled around such a magnet, they arrange themselves along curved paths, forming loops that link one end of the magnet to the other. Those loops trace the direction of the magnetic field. Now, instead of a small bar magnet on a table, imagine that the entire Earth has a similar magnetic pattern, but on a planetary scale. Lines of force emerge from regions near what we call the magnetic South Pole curve, outward through space, and re-enter near the magnetic North Pole. Of course, in reality, the field is not made of lines. The lines are a way of visualizing direction. Still, they can be useful for your imagination. See those lines as soft arcs, faint and luminous, rising out of the northern regions, curving away from the planet, then looping back down into the southern regions. See other arcs closer in, hugging the atmosphere more tightly, and others farther out, describing larger loops. Together, they form a kind of layered shell, like many strands of delicate thread wrapped around a sphere. These arcs are not solid. They are not barriers you could touch. They are patterns in the way space responds to electric charges. If a tiny charged particle, perhaps from the sun, wanders into this region, it does not move in a straight line. It feels a gentle influence guiding it along these invisible paths, like a leaf being steered by a river's current. Let your attention follow one of these lines as it stretches away from the planet. On the side facing the sun, the lines are closer together, pressed in slightly by the steady pressure of the solar wind. It is as if the front of the magnetic shell has been pushed inward, making that side a little flatter and nearer to Earth. On the side facing away from the sun, those same lines are pulled into a long tail extended far into space. The shape of the magnetic field out here is called the magnetosphere. It is not a perfect sphere at all, but more like a droplet or a teardrop compressed on one side and stretched on the other. This shape may be difficult to hold in your mind all at once, and that is completely fine. You do not have to see every detail clearly. You can simply have the sense that Earth is not naked in space. It is wrapped in a region where the rules for charged particles are different, guided by this quiet field. The scale of this structure is enormous. The daytime side, where the sun's wind presses against our magnetosphere, can lie tens of thousands of kilometers above the surface. The tail can stretch hundreds of thousands of kilometers into the night side of space. These distances are so large that they can feel abstract, almost impossible to imagine exactly. Instead of trying to measure them in your mind, you can let them dissolve into a simple feeling that the protective influence of Earth's magnetism reaches far beyond the clouds, far beyond the highest satellites, into a realm where you are only a distant observer. What matters for you in this quiet moment is not the exact size. What matters is knowing that there is a gently organized region around our planet, a kind of invisible weather pattern in space that shapes how solar particles move long before they ever approach the air you breathe. You might picture a very light mist of particles drifting in from the direction of the sun. As they come near Earth, they encounter this magnetic region and begin to follow its curves. Some are directed around the planet, sliding along the outer field lines and continuing on their way. Some are guided into the long tail behind Earth, caught for a time in a kind of magnetic wake. Only a small fraction make their way down toward the polar regions, where the field lines dip into the atmosphere. Those are the particles that can eventually contribute to the shimmering curtains of Aurora, the northern and southern lights that people sometimes travel great distances to see. Even there, where this interaction becomes visible to human eyes, the process is gentle compared to many things in the universe. It is a dance of energy and light, a sign that the magnetosphere is doing its work by steering and transforming the flow of charged particles, not a sign that the surface of the Earth is being stripped or torn. If you notice your mind starting to think of dramatic headlines or frightening phrases you may have seen, you can let them pass through like stray signals. In this space, we are not amplifying fear. We are simply observing a system that has been in place for a very long time, keeping most of the sun's charged particles from ever reaching the lower atmosphere in the first place. Bring your focus back, if you like, to the picture of Earth as a small glowing sphere surrounded by these soft arcs of magnetic influence. Around that, imagine an even more diffuse region where the solar wind and the magnetosphere meet and negotiate. This is a boundary that moves slightly as conditions in space change, but it always reforms, always wraps back around the planet. You do not have to manage any of this. You can treat it the way you treat the beating of your own heart or the rising and falling of your chest. It is a background rhythm of the world, something that continues whether anyone is watching or not. As you breathe in, now you can imagine that your inhale lifts your point of view just a little higher, letting you see the whole structure as a single quiet shape. As you breathe out, you can feel your awareness settle back toward the planet, toward the thin blue shell of air, toward the place on the surface where you are truly lying. In the next part of our journey, we will not stay in orbit. We will gently descend in imagination, passing through the sky and the crust down toward the deep interior of Earth, where the motions that generate this magnetic field begin. For now, you can rest with the knowledge that above you, around you, and far beyond the roof or the sky, the planet is wrapped in an invisible geometry that has been guarding it for ages, while you are free to release your attention and let the story carry you onward. As we leave the silent shapes of Earth's magnetic shell drifting around the planet, your attention can begin to sink gently downward again. There is no rush. Nothing in this journey requires speed. Imagine that the soft orbit where you were floating a moment ago begins to lower itself, as if the invisible platform beneath your thoughts is descending at a calm, measured pace. You are not falling. You are simply returning back toward the thin blue glow of the atmosphere, back toward the familiar skin of the Earth, back toward the surface where life unfolds. Your perspective drifts downward like a leaf settling after a breeze. The planet grows larger beneath you, filling your view not with urgency, but with a kind of quiet recognition. As you pass slowly through the boundary of space and into the upper atmosphere, nothing tugs at you or presses against you. There is no heat, no friction, no noise. In this imagined descent, you are gliding through layers that are normally the domain of satellites and auroras, as if you were weightless, made only of attention and breath. Clouds come into view again, broad, soft structures drifting in slow layers. You slip through them, effortlessly, like a thought passing through memory. The world beneath becomes clearer. Oceans, continents, ridges, plains. You can choose to land anywhere. The exact location does not matter. The ground beneath you is simply the doorway to what lies below. When your awareness finally touches the surface in imagination, feel how different this scale is from the great arcs of magnetism that surround the planet. Up above, forces span thousands of kilometers. Down here, beneath the soil and stone, the processes that build Earth's magnetic shield begin not in vast emptiness, but in deep enclosed chambers of heat and movement. Take a breath in, and as you exhale, let your attention pass downward through the crust. You can imagine the crust as a thin, solid rind, just a few tens of kilometers thick on average, even though it feels infinite when you stand on it. This crust holds mountains, forests, cities, oceans, and the entire record of human history. But compared to the whole planet, it is only the outermost paint on a much larger sphere. Below the crust lies the mantle, a realm of slow, dense rock, flowing over time spans far too long for daily experience to grasp. This mantle is not molten in the dramatic sense people sometimes imagine. It behaves more like an extremely thick syrup, creeping and shifting across millions of years. You can picture it as a region of deep muted color, filled with pressure and ancient warmth. The movements here are patient, unhurried, and entirely beyond the scale of an individual life. Continue sinking in imagination. Your body remains still in your bed, but your awareness travels downward through this mantle, guided by curiosity rather than gravity. As you descend, imagine faint pulses of heat rising through the rock, hints of energy stored since the earth first formed. Deeper still, the mantle gives way to the outer core. Take a slow breath here, because this is a transition not just of depth, but of state. The outer core is made of metal, mostly iron, mixed with nickel and lighter elements, but under such pressure and heat that it behaves like a liquid. Not a thin, watery liquid, but a heavy rolling ocean of molten metal. Rivers of glowing iron flow around the solid inner core, churning and circulating in loops that never truly stop. This is where Earth's magnetic field is born. Let yourself imagine this outer core as a vast spherical sea of brightness, a place where heat glows not with flame, but with a deep inner radiance. You are not touching it. You are not in danger. You are only observing from a safe symbolic distance. Think of it as a heart, not in shape, but in function, something working continuously and quietly to support everything above. Within this liquid metal, motions form, patterns, convection currents, rising and sinking, spiraling in slow planetary scale loops. Because the metal is electrically conductive, these motions generate electric currents. And electric currents on a planetary scale create magnetic fields. This process is called the geodynamo, but you do not need the technical term to feel its meaning. You can think of it instead as a gentle ancient engine, a device that no one built, but that emerged naturally from the physics of a young cooling planet. Imagine massive eddies of liquid iron drifting in slow spirals around the inner core. Picture open shapes folds rotating sheets of motion that twist and stretch. Each movement gives rise to a faint magnetic influence, and together, over millions of years, these influences align into the global field that now surrounds Earth. Every second, this molten ocean churns, driven by heat from below, and the gradual cooling of the planet as a whole. But compared to anything in daily life, its movements are unbelievably slow. Some flows take centuries to complete a single circuit. Others shift only by small degrees over long periods. This slowness is part of the comfort. Nothing here is rushing. Nothing is chaotic. It is the deep, quiet rhythm of a planet that has been alive in its geologic way for over 4 billion years. Take a moment to imagine the inner core at the center of all this. It is solid iron, not because it is cool, but because the pressure here is so immense that atoms are forced into a crystalline structure despite the overwhelming heat. You can picture it as a compact sphere of bright, dense metal suspended inside the rolling ocean of the outer core, like a glowing lantern at the center of a deep metallic sea. The outer core flows around this solid center, turning swirling circulating. These flows create spirals of electric current, and those spirals amplify the magnetic field, sustaining it over long arcs of time. The field itself is not located at one place. It emerges from the entire system: the heat, the motion, the conductivity, the rotation of the planet. It is a product of cooperation across layers of matter. If the imagery becomes too bright or too vivid for sleep, you can soften it. Let the molten metal become a muted orange glow, as if viewed through shaded glass. Let the movement become slower, gentler drifting rather than churning. You are not in the core. You are only imagining the pulse of a world that holds you securely at its surface. The scale of this system can be astonishing, but it is not frightening. The pressures and temperatures involved are immense, but they exist far beyond anything that reaches human experience. They are safely contained deep inside the planet. For all the scale and power here, none of it is something you need to manage or anticipate. It has been working since long before the first forests, the first oceans, the first moments of biological life. As you breathe, imagine that each inhale brings you slightly closer to the center of this inner world, and each exhale lets you drift outward again. You are hovering, not sinking, observing, not entering, resting, not working. If you picture the molten outer core as a sphere of glowing motion, you can imagine that the solid inner core is like a quiet sun inside it, steady and unmoving. The contrast between movement and stillness is what generates the dynamo effect motion around a central anchor. Think of it as a cosmic scale music box, but one that never winds down. The rotation of Earth helps guide the flows into spirals. The heat drives the convection. The conductivity allows electric currents. Combine all three, and you have a self-sustaining magnetic field, one that extends far beyond the surface, shaping the space environment of an entire planet. Let this idea rest lightly in your mind. You do not need to hold on to mechanisms or equations. You can simply sense the presence of an interior process, steady, ancient, and reliable. Another breath in, another breath out. If your mind drifts, that is perfectly fine. The core of Earth does not need your focus to keep working. It does not change because you look at it or forget about it. It is a background engine humming along beneath every day and night of your life. Imagine now that the molten currents below you begin to slow in your vision, not because they are actually slowing, but because your awareness is softening, blending the movement into a single steady glow. You no longer see individual rivers or spirals. You see only an impression of warm moving metal, a symbol of the planet's inner energy. This is enough. You have walked through the outer boundary of space, slipped through the atmosphere, passed through the crust and mantle in imagination, and reached the region where Earth's protective field begins. You have seen in soft imagery how the deep interior stirs to create a shield that extends far beyond anything visible on the surface. As we move onward in this journey, we will rise again, not as quickly as we descended, but with the same calm pacing. We will return to the space just outside Earth, where the magnetic field meets the solar wind. There we will watch how this shield shapes the flow of charged particles and prevents most of them from entering the air you breathe. For now, you can hold this sense of a warm, slowly turning center inside the planet, a center you will never touch, but one that touches your life every day by protecting the world from above. When you are ready, let your awareness begin to float upward again, as lightly as a bubble rising through still water. We will return to the edge of Earth's magnetic envelope, where sunlight meets the boundary of the field, and watch the next part of the story unfold. We will rise with that same gentle pace, as if your awareness were being carried upward through layers of rock and mantle and crust back toward the open sky. Your body remains where it is solid and supported. Only your point of view is moving light and unburdened, following the path you took earlier, but in reverse. You pass again through the mantle in imagination, through slow, ancient flows of rock that pay no attention to the brief flicker of human time. You glide through the crust, past the deep roots of mountains, past the shallow seas, and the continents you know from maps. You reach the familiar surface where weather and water and life are active, and then you keep going, up through the layers of air, past the highest clouds, past the cruising lanes of airplanes, past the realm where the blue of the sky begins to thin and darken. Once more, the world curves under you. Once more, the thin, luminous shell of the atmosphere glows around the edge of the planet. Take a slow breath in, and as you breathe out, let yourself settle again into that calm orbit where Earth fills part of your view and space fills the rest. You can see the planet as a sphere now, with its soft colors and gradual shadows. You can sense in the background of your thoughts the quiet inner engine you visited a moment ago, far below the surface, still turning, still sustaining the magnetic field. Now, we are going to watch how that field reaches outward to meet the steady breath of the sun. Picture the sun far away, not as a harsh light, but as a warm, steady presence in one direction. From that direction, a continuous stream of particles flows outward. This is the solar wind. It is not wind in the way we experience air moving on Earth. It is much thinner, a delicate drizzle of charged particles spread over enormous distances. Yet over the span between Sun and Earth, its presence is real. In the empty reaches between planets, the solar wind flows mostly unbothered, carrying with it traces of the Sun's magnetic field. But as it approaches Earth, it encounters the region shaped by our own magnetic field, the magnetosphere. You can imagine the magnetosphere as a kind of invisible droplet surrounding the planet. On the side facing the Sun, it is compressed, pushed inward slightly by the steady pressure of the solar wind. On the side facing away from the Sun, it is drawn out into a long tail trailing behind Earth, like a slender streamer pointing into the night side of space. This droplet is not made of any solid material. It is a pattern, a volume within which the motion of charged particles is guided by Earth's magnetic field. The boundary where the solar wind meets this region is sometimes called the magnetopause. You do not need to remember the term. You can simply think of it as the place where the Sun's influence and Earth's magnetic influence negotiate. Let your attention move outward from the surface of the Earth along one of the field lines you pictured earlier. As you travel in imagination, you cross the atmosphere, then the thin exosphere, where occasional atoms drift alone, and then reach a region where solar particles and magnetic forces meet. Here, the solar wind is like a river running into a rock. But instead of bouncing, it bends. Charged particles feel the presence of the magnetic field and are redirected. Some are slowed and diverted around the droplet shape of the magnetosphere. Others are captured and follow along field lines, spiraling as they go. The overall effect is that most of the particles never reach the atmosphere directly. They are turned aside, sliding around the planet rather than striking it head-on. In this way, the magnetosphere acts as a shield, not by blocking everything with a barrier, but by gently guiding paths so that only a small fraction of the flow connects with the upper air. Take another slow breath and imagine the solar wind not as a roar or a blast, but as a gentle, constant flow. It is as if the Sun is exhaling very softly in all directions. Earth's magnetosphere sits in that breath and shapes it, carving out a small protected region where the rules of motion are changed. On days when the Sun is calm, the solar wind is relatively steady. The magnetosphere holds its shape with minor adjustments, flexing a little as conditions change, but always reforming around the planet. On days when the Sun sends out stronger gusts during events we call solar storms, or coronal mass ejections, more particles and stronger magnetic disturbances arrive. From the surface, these changes are usually invisible. The sky looks the same. The air feels the same. People walk, work, talk, and sleep without any direct sensation of the extra particles passing by high above. The magnetosphere, however, feels the difference. You can imagine that during one of these stronger episodes, the front of Earth's magnetic bubble is pushed in a little more. The lines of force are pressed closer to the planet on the day side, then spring back when the pressure decreases. The long tail on the night side is stretched and disturbed, then reconfigures. Within this region, Currents are induced fields, connect and disconnect, and energy is transferred. In scientific language, there are many specific phenomena to describe these interactions: reconnection substorms, ring currents, and more. For tonight, you do not need those terms. It is enough to hold the feeling of a flexible, resilient shape in space, absorbing and redirecting the extra energy sent from the sun, then relaxing again afterward. From your imagined vantage point, you might see the solar wind as faint streaks or flows of particles approaching from the sunward side. As they reach the magnetosphere, many are turned aside their paths, bending around the droplet. Some slide along the front and then down the sides. Others are caught in the tail, circling and drifting within that extended region behind the planet. Only a minority find themselves guided along field lines that curve down toward the polar regions. Those are the particles that can penetrate closer to the atmosphere, colliding with atoms in the upper air and producing light. When conditions are right, that light appears as shimmering curtains or arcs the auroras that spread across polar skies. Even then, what you are seeing in Aurora is the signature of a process already under control. It is the visible glow of energy being absorbed and transformed, not a sign that the shield has failed. It is like seeing waves breaking on a beach. The waves are real, and in some places they can be powerful, but the shoreline exists to meet them. While all of this unfolds high above your life on the surface, continues under familiar conditions. Sometimes during especially strong geomagnetic storms, systems built by humans can feel the effects. Currents can be induced in long power lines. Satellite electronics can be stressed. Communication signals can be disturbed. That is why engineers and scientists monitor space weather. They watch for incoming disturbances and prepare systems to handle them, much as meteorologists watch the atmosphere for storms and advise people when strong winds or heavy rains are expected. This is a layer of care happening mostly out of sight, carried out by people who spend their days thinking about fields, particles, and plasma, so that most others do not have to. For the vast majority of people on Earth, even during these stronger space weather events, daily life continues safely. The magnetosphere and the atmosphere together provide a buffer. The field guides much of the energy around and past the planet. The air absorbs and scatters what remains. Your body is shielded not only by these vast systems, but also by the walls and roofs and tissues that surround you. If at any point you notice old images or dramatic phrases from news stories rising in your mind, you can gently contrast them with this softer picture. Instead of seeing Earth as exposed and fragile, you can see it as wrapped in multiple layers of protection. Instead of imagining sudden catastrophe, you can imagine flexible adaptation, both in the natural system and in the human technologies designed to live within it. Take a moment to feel the weight of your own body again. The same gravity that keeps your muscles connected to the bed or chair is part of the overall balance of forces that shapes Earth as a whole. The planet orbits the sun. The core generates magnetic fields. The magnetosphere meets the solar wind. All of these things are connected, but none of them require your effort. You might picture the Earth now as a glowing sphere with a soft, invisible shell floating in the gentle outflow of the sun. That shell deforms slightly as gusts in the solar wind pass by, then recovers. Inside, clouds form, rain falls, plants grow, people sleep. Imagine a day when the sun has been particularly active. Scientists send alerts. Instruments in space detect changes. Somewhere far above the ground, the magnetosphere shivers, then rebalances. In the polar skies, auroras brighten. On the surface, a person steps outside, looks up, and sees only stars, unaware of the larger dance taking place beyond their sight. That person might be you. Or it might be someone on the other side of the world. In either case, they are held in the same protective structures, walking under the same layered shields of field and air and magnetic shape. As you breathe in now, you can imagine inhaling a sense of distance. The sun is far away. The interactions between solar wind and magnetosphere happen far from your skin, far from your room. As you breathe out, you can let go of any residual tension around those words, letting them drain away like water soaking into soft ground. You do not need to track solar forecasts. You do not need to calculate indices or read charts. In this journey, you are simply acknowledging that there is a relationship between Earth and its star, and that within that relationship, our planet has developed a way of shaping the flow of particles so that life can continue on the surface. The shield is not perfect. No system in nature is. Over very long timescales, the magnetic field changes. Its strength and orientation drift. Poles wander. Sometimes they've even reversed. Yet through all of this, through vast stretches of geological time, the field has persisted, always returning, always re-establishing a protective influence in space. You are living in just one moment of that long story. For the length of your life, and for many lives before and after Earth's magnetic field, will remain a steady, familiar presence, wrapping the world in a quietly protective geometry. In a little while, we will explore a gentle thought experiment. We will imagine in a safe and distant way what a world might be like without such a shield. Not because this is what awaits us, but because seeing that contrast can deepen our sense of how quietly fortunate our real situation is. Before we do that, take one more breath with this image of the magnetosphere in mind. Earth, turning slowly. The sun far away, sending out a continuous breath of particles. The magnetosphere deforming and recovering, guiding and redirecting, allowing only a small fraction of energy to paint the polar skies. As you exhale, let that whole picture soften and blur, as if you were stepping back from a painting in a dim gallery. You do not have to keep every detail. You can simply remember that above you and around you, there is more protection than you can see. And now, in the next part of our journey, we will briefly visit a different kind of world, purely in imagination, to understand by contrast what it means to live under such a shield. To visit this other kind of world, you do not have to go anywhere. You can stay exactly as you are resting where you lie, breathing at your own comfortable pace. Only your imagination will travel, and even then it will move through a landscape that cannot reach you. We will treat this as a gentle thought experiment, a way of tracing the outline of what might have been, not a prediction of what will be. Your real world, the one under the magnetic shield we have been exploring, remains exactly as it is. The world without a shield is just a picture held at a safe distance. Imagine now that you are looking out over another planet. At first glance from far away, it might look familiar. It orbits a star. It has a solid surface. It once had air and water. Perhaps it is somewhat smaller than Earth, with a paler color reds and browns, where Earth shows blues and greens. You can think of Mars if that helps, or you can let this be a nameless world. What matters is that long ago it did not develop or maintain a strong global magnetic field. There is no extensive magnetosphere to carve out a protected region in the stellar wind. The star's particles flow around it with hardly any deflection. In the early days of this planet, there may have been a thicker atmosphere. Volcanic outgassing may have filled the sky with gases. Liquid water may have pooled on the surface, forming lakes and perhaps shallow seas. For a time, it might have looked like a place where life could begin, without a sustained magnetic shield, though the story that followed was different. Over long stretches of time, the upper layers of the atmosphere exposed directly to the energetic particles and radiation from the star began to thin. The lightest molecules were stripped away, first, then others. The winds of space carried them off. Each year brought only a tiny change, far too small to notice on a human timescale. But centuries became millennia, and millennia became millions of years. Little by little, the sky grew thinner and drier. You can picture this as a slow fading rather than a sudden loss. Clouds became rarer. The sound of wind, if anyone had been there to hear it, grew quieter. Lakes shrank. Shorelines pulled back. The protective blanket of air that moderated temperature and shielded the surface from high-energy particles became less effective. Eventually, what remained was a thin atmosphere unable to hold much heat, unable to support stable bodies of liquid water on the surface. During the day, the ground could become relatively warm under direct sunlight. At night, it would release that warmth quickly into space, plunging into cold. The surface became a place of extremes. This might sound like a harsh story, but remember that it is not your story. You are not standing on that world. You are not breathing its thin air. You are observing from very far away, like someone looking at an old photograph through a pane of glass. Let your imagination drift down closer to the surface of this unshielded planet. You might see a landscape of bare rock and dust carved by ancient flows of water that no longer exist. Deep channels, dry riverbeds, and basin-like craters speak of a wetter time, but there is no rain now. The sky above is a subdued, dusty color. The sun appears smaller and more stark, shining through a thin haze. If you were to stand here in reality, you would need a suit layers of protection from radiation and temperature and vacuum. Yet in your imagination, you can move lightly untouched by the conditions. You can run a finger along a stone that has been sandblasted by eons of fine particles, noticing its smoothness. You can look up at the sky and see the unfiltered glare of the star, knowing that without shielding high-energy particles and ultraviolet light reach the ground more easily. There might be a faint aurora at times, but without a strong global magnetic field, it would not form the structured ovals that circle Earth's poles. Instead, it might appear as patchy glows, less organized, less predictable. The whole interaction between stellar wind and planet would be different. As you walk through this imagined landscape, notice the stillness. There are no sounds of leaves or insects, no distant murmur of oceans. The silence may feel large, but it does not have to feel threatening. It is simply the consequence of a world that followed another path. Now slowly, let your point of view rise away from this surface. Pull back until you can see the whole planet again, a dry, quiet sphere orbiting its star. Its lack of a strong magnetic field did not cause every outcome alone. Planetary size composition, distance from the star, and many other factors contributed. Yet the absence of a magnetosphere played a part in shaping its fate. This is one branch of possibility, a world where early promise thinned into a cold, sparse environment. A world that from afar can teach us about our own planet by contrast. Turn your attention now back toward Earth, the real Earth, the one that holds you. In your mind's eye, let the dry, quiet planet shrink and slide to one side like a small marble placed gently on a table. In front of you, let Earth swell into view again, blue, white, and green, wrapped in a substantial atmosphere, enclosed within an active magnetic field that stretches far into space. Remember the liquid outer core and the solid inner core. Remember the slow, patient flows of molten metal generating electric currents. Remember the field lines you pictured arching from pole to pole, creating the magnetosphere that shapes the solar wind around the planet. These things are not static, but they have endured and reorganized over very long periods, long enough to support the rise of oceans, continents, climates, and life. Imagine for a moment that Earth had followed a different path. Perhaps its core cooled more quickly, solidifying the outer core and halting the dynamo. Perhaps the planet had been smaller, with less internal heat unable to sustain the flows that maintain the magnetic field. In such cases, the shield would weaken or vanish, and the story of the atmosphere and surface would likely have been altered in profound ways. But again, this is not the path our world took. Your Earth still hums with an inner engine. The geodynamo still operates. The magnetosphere still wraps the planet, modulating the influence of the sun's outflow. Life developed under these conditions adapted to them, and now builds societies and stories on top of them. You are lying under a sky that sits atop a deep column of air, not a thin whisper. You are protected by a magnetic shield that intercepts and redirects many of the particles that might otherwise interact directly with the atmosphere and surface. You are in a place where liquid water can exist stably on the ground, where temperatures are moderated by both air and ocean, where the ingredients for life have had billions of years to mix and evolve. Take a gentle breath, and as you exhale, allow a sense of quiet gratitude to seep in. Not the loud kind of gratitude that demands smiles and celebration, just a simple, soft awareness that your world is unusually accommodating compared to many possible worlds. Not perfect, not invulnerable, but remarkably habitable. If your thoughts try to turn this into a worry, thinking ahead to distant futures, imagining scenarios of change, you can kindly remind them that those timescales are vast. Planetary fields evolve over millions of years. Human timescales are brief by comparison. Within the span of your own life, and for many generations around it, the magnetic field will be a stable presence. You can picture the core as continuing to move slowly and steadily. The molten metal will continue to swirl. The field will continue to extend into space, guiding particles shaping the magnetosphere. People will continue to study it, refine their models, and learn more. Engineers will continue to design systems that account for its behavior. All of this will happen whether you personally pay attention to it or not. In this way, you can let go of any sense of responsibility for these cosmic and geologic processes. You are allowed to be a guest here, a passenger. Your role is to live your life as it unfolds on the surface, not to carry the weight of the planet's deep machinery. Let the image of the unshielded world fade completely now. You can imagine it slipping behind a curtain or dissolving into a point of light. In its place, hold only Earth, the world you know seen from afar. Blue oceans, white storms curling over continents, green and brown land masses, a thin, glowing rim of atmosphere, and around it all, an invisible but very real magnetic structure, like a quiet guardian drawn in lines you cannot see. You are on that world. You are within that shield. You are breathing air that has been warmed and softened by sunlight, filtered through multiple layers of protection. As you lie here, there may still be space weather happening far above. The sun continues its own cycles regardless of human schedules. Some days are quieter. Some days are more active. Yet through it all, the shield holds. It flexes it, changes shape it, responds, and then it settles again. In the next part of our journey, we will return more fully to the surface, to the level of ordinary days and nights. We will look at life under this magnetic blanket, not in abstract terms, but in scenes and moments that might feel closer to your own experience. For now, take one more slow breath, feeling the firm support beneath you, and let the contrast between those two imagined worlds settle inside you as a gentle sense of safety in the one you truly inhabit. As the imagined, unshielded world fades behind you like a picture sliding into a distant drawer, your awareness can return slowly and comfortably to the familiar surface of Earth. You do not have to rush the transition. Think of it as coming back from a long, slow exhale one, where your attention drifts outward and then gently returns, settling inside your chest again. You might picture Earth growing larger in your mind's eye, its colors returning the deep blues of oceans, the scattered greens of forests, the soft browns of deserts, the curling whites of clouds, all of it held beneath a sky of breathable air. And beneath that sky, you lying somewhere in a quiet room, wrapped in warmth and gravity, and the calm rhythm of your own breathing. The magnetic shield we explored earlier is still there far above. It stretches out invisibly through space, deflecting and guiding the solar wind. Beneath that shield, the atmosphere softens the sun's energy, scattering what arrives, filtering what would be harsh, warming what would be cold. These layers, magnetic and atmospheric, work together like nested blankets, each one catching a different kind of disturbance so that life on the surface can unfold in peace. Let yourself imagine now the surface of Earth not as a single view, but as many small scenes unfolding across the globe. Each one is ordinary, everyday, unassuming. But each one is possible because of the quiet protection above. Picture, for instance, a person taking an evening walk down a quiet street. They might be carrying groceries or simply stretching their legs. A street lamp casts a warm circle of light around them. Trees sway slightly in the breeze. Nothing about this moment feels unusual. They do not look up, do not think about magnetic fields, do not sense the gentle currents of charged particles moving far above. And yet, as they walk beneath the street lamp, the entire sky above them, layer upon layer of air, and magnetism continues to buffer and redirect the flow of space. Far overhead, hundreds of kilometers above that evening, Walker solar particles that found their way into Earth's magnetic field are spiraling along invisible lines. None of this is felt on the skin. None of it interrupts the rhythm of footsteps on pavement. The processes unfold in separate layers, connected but distant, allowing ordinary lives to continue without concern. Another breath in, another breath out. Let your attention drift now to a different scene. A child sits on a patch of grass near a playground, tracing a stick through the dirt. Their world is small and immediate, the coolness of the soil, the shapes they draw, the sound of distant laughter. Above them, the sun is bright, but softened by clouds. The atmosphere filters the ultraviolet light. The magnetic field shapes the charged particles. The combination of these two shields creates a space where a child can sit safely beneath a star. This is one of the quiet gifts of Earth, that the processes which protect us operate without demands, without fanfare, without requiring awareness from those they shelter. Travel in imagination now to a high-latitude region where sometimes the sky glows. Maybe it is a cold night in northern Canada, or a wide-open field in Norway, or a snowy stretch along the coast of Iceland. Someone stands bundled in layers, watching faint green arcs shimmer across the horizon. The aurora moves slowly, like a curtain being brushed by a gentle hand. Sometimes it brightens. Sometimes it fades. It is a reminder of the interplay between Earth's magnetic field and the solar wind. But for the person watching it is simply beauty. They do not need to calculate particle flows. They do not need to understand magnetic reconnection or field line topology. They only need to look up, breathe in the cold air, and feel the quiet awe of light shaped by forces far above human scale. The aurora is the visible sign of the magnetosphere doing its work, absorbing, guiding, converting the incoming energy into something that becomes light in the sky instead of disturbance on the ground. Let that image linger for a moment. A person standing under a sheet of moving color, held by the same gravity that holds you protected by the same magnetic story that surrounds your world every day. As you settle deeper, imagine shifting scenes again. Now, you are watching a pilot flying through the night sky. Inside the cockpit, instruments glow softly. The view outside is dark and vast, punctuated only by occasional stars. The pilot is cruising far above the weather, but still far below the magnetosphere. They are wrapped in layers of protection, the atmosphere below the magnetic field, above the engineered shielding of the aircraft around them. Even here, where the sky feels open and enormous, life continues safely within the boundaries shaped by the planet's magnetic presence. Another scene. A researcher sits in a quiet laboratory monitoring delicate instruments that detect small variations in Earth's magnetic field. Outside the building, people walk by without noticing anything at all. Inside, the researcher sees jagged lines on a screen, tiny signatures of solar activity. They know that charged particles are brushing the edges of the magnetosphere, tugging at field lines, inducing currents. But even they work calmly, knowing these shifts are expected, monitored, and well understood in the context of the planet's natural defenses. Let these overlapping images reassure you. People living, moving, sleeping, working, laughing, all under a shield they never have to command. Allow your breath to deepen by a small amount. Feel the comfort of gravity holding you to the surface of this well-protected world. Gravity is part of the story too, a constant downward embrace that creates the sense of weight you feel now, even as your imagination floats high above and deep below. You might picture another scene, someone sitting by a window on a rainy day. They do not think about the magnetosphere as they listen to raindrops ticking against the glass. They do not see the solar particles being redirected miles above their heads. They only see the soft pattern of water running down the pane. The entire cosmic dance remains invisible to them, yet it shapes their environment, subtly ensuring that Earth remains a place where water can fall from clouds, where temperatures stay within livable ranges, where storms belong to the weather and not to the sun. Let your attention move to the oceans now. Imagine waves rolling toward a shoreline, their motions shaped by wind and moon and basin. Underneath those waves, fish glide. Above them, birds glide on currents of air. In the distance, a ship moves steadily along. The ocean absorbs sunlight, redistributes heat, and plays its own role in stabilizing the climate. But about 2,000 kilometers above that ship, the magnetosphere is still interacting with solar particles, still shielding the upper layers of the atmosphere from excessive stripping. The two systems, the magnetic and the climatic, may seem unrelated, but they form part of the larger story of a habitable planet. Earth is a place where deep interior flows produce a magnetic field, and where surface and atmospheric processes thrive because of the stability that field helps maintain. If your mind wanders, let it. If your breathing slows, allow it. If your eyelids grow heavier, that is welcome. You are not required to stay sharply focused. You are simply traveling along a gentle stream of thought, drifting between scientific imagery and scenes of ordinary life. Let us visit another small moment. A long-distance hiker sits on a hill at dusk, watching the last light gather along the edge of the world. They might be hundreds of miles from any city, far from artificial light or noise. As night settles, the stars emerge one by one. A thin band of the Milky Way glows overhead. The hiker pulls their jacket tighter and feels the simple joy of breathing cold, clean air. They do not know that above them, field lines are stretching and curving, that the magnetosphere is interacting with the sun's outflow at that very moment. They do not feel the slight changes in space weather. They simply feel alive and quiet in a world that supports them. Or imagine someone lying on a blanket in a park at night, looking up at a sky that seems impossibly deep. They might be thinking about stars, about time, about the people in their life. They are not thinking about charged particles spiraling along magnetic paths above the atmosphere. Yet those spirals are happening right then, shaping the environment around their entire planet. This is one of the gentle truths of Earth, that we live inside multi-layered systems far larger than ourselves, systems that work continuously and quietly, so that life can follow its normal rhythms. Now let your perspective shift one more time. Picture a vast power grid stretching across a continent, miles of wires, transformers, substations. During strong space weather, tiny currents can be induced in these long lines. Engineers know this and monitor conditions. But for the people living in cities and towns connected by that grid, the lights remain on. Refrigerators hum. Phones charge. Families sit together under warm lamps. Space weather swirls far above, but human life continues comfortably below. Or think of a satellite orbiting high above Earth, wrapped in its own shielding, designed specifically to withstand the charged environment it passes through. That satellite might carry data communication signals, navigation, or weather observations that help millions of people on the surface every day. It relies on the engineers who built it, but it also relies on the magnetosphere, which reduces the intensity of the particle environment it encounters. Each of these scenes illustrates the same quiet truth. Life under the magnetic blanket is not defined by constant danger or noise. It is defined by normalcy, by continuity, by stability, by the freedom to live without needing to control or even understand the cosmic forces that sweep through the solar system. Another slow, comfortable breath. You might now imagine Earth rotating gently beneath the magnetosphere, like a lantern turning inside a protective cage of invisible steel. Only the cage is flexible, organic, and made not of metal, but of magnetic structure. The lantern glows with continents, clouds, and oceans. The cage adjusts, reacts, softens, shields, and then settles again. And down on the surface, people sleep. Homes rest under the night sky. Wind moves through trees. Ocean waves break against shores. In countless bedrooms, people pull blankets a little higher, turn over, breathe, and drift deeper into rest, unaware of the vast machinery above that quietly keeps their world stable. You are one of them. You are lying beneath the same layered protections, supported by the same quiet forces, held inside the same magnetic geometry that has sheltered life for billions of years. You do not have to think about any of it. You do not have to manage it. You only have to rest within it. Soon, we will enter the final part of this journey, a deeper descent into calm, where the story softens into a slow drift, and your mind is invited to let go of structure altogether. But before we go, take one last gentle breath with the awareness that you are living in a world balanced between its inner dynamo and its outer shield. As you exhale, allow all the images, all the scenes, all the gentle science to dissolve into a soft glow behind your eyelids. The planet continues turning. The shield continues shaping space. The sky continues holding air. And you continue resting, supported by everything below and above. When you are ready, we will move into the deepest drift zone of this journey, where words become slower, softer, and fewer, inviting your mind to settle in the quietest part of the night. When you are ready, you can let your awareness move with me into that deeper part of the journey, where the story becomes less about ideas and more about a feeling of quiet, steady safety. You do not have to do anything special for this next part. You do not have to follow every word. In fact, it is perfectly all right if the words begin to blur or drift away. They are here simply as a gentle background, something soft for your mind to lean against while your body continues to unwind. Imagine once more that you are looking at Earth from a distance, not from a place of analysis or measurement, but from a place of calm observation. The planet hangs in the dark, a round glowing presence, with slowly moving clouds, steady oceans, and continents sleeping under the night. Around it, the magnetic field extends like a faint invisible halo. You know it is there, even though you cannot see it. You may picture it as soft lines looping out into space, or as a gentle glow, or simply as an unseen boundary. But however you imagine it, you know that it exists as part of the planet's quiet design. Far above that field, the sun continues to shine. It breathes out its particles and its light in all directions. Somewhere high in the magnetosphere, a few of those particles are being guided around the Earth, slipping along field lines, or drifting into the long tail behind the planet. Somewhere at the poles, faint auroras glow in the upper air, but all of that can stay far away from you now, like distant traffic heard through a closed window. It is real, but it is not urgent. It is part of the background. It can continue without your help. Bring your attention slowly back down toward the surface, toward the thin blue shell of air, toward the land and water, toward the particular place on the planet where you are resting. Imagine descending through the clouds again, feeling nothing on your skin, only watching as the details become clearer. The outlines of terrain, the shapes of buildings or hills, the textures of forests or streets appear and then fade as you get closer to your own location. Finally, in your mind's eye, you arrive back in your room. You can see yourself from above for a moment, as if you were watching someone else resting. A body lying on a bed or reclining in a chair wrapped in whatever coverings you have chosen. The room around you has its familiar shapes, but they are softened now by the dimness. Edges are less sharp. Corners recede into shadow. Only a few details stand out: the line of a pillow, the curve of a blanket, the faint suggestion of a wall. You do not need to notice everything. You only need to recognize that this is a safe place. A place where you have permission to let go of the day. Gently bring your focus back inside your own body. Notice where it touches the surface beneath you. Your head, the weight of it resting. Your shoulders may be a little looser than before. Your arms supported without effort. Your back, your hips, your legs, your feet. Each point of contact is a reminder that you are held. Above you, the sky sits on a thick blanket of air. Above that, the magnetosphere shapes the flow of space. But you do not have to travel there again tonight. You have seen enough. You have followed the story from deep inside the core to the outer reaches of the shield. Now you can rest entirely at the surface with nothing left to explore. If thoughts from the day try to rise, you can imagine placing them gently at the edge of your awareness, as if you were putting small stones along the shore of a calm lake. They can stay there resting while the center of the lake remains smooth and undisturbed. The thoughts do not have to disappear. They simply do not need to be in the middle right now. If you like, you can use a simple count to guide yourself deeper. With each number, we can touch briefly on an image from this journey, then let it fade. There is no need to hold on to any of them. They are only gentle steps, each one a little softer then the last. 10. Picture the Earth as a whole turning slowly in space. Oceans, land, clouds, night and day. A complete quiet world. Then let that image soften. 9. Imagine the thin blue glow of the atmosphere wrapped around the planet, delicate but real, holding air weather, and the breath you are taking right now. Let that image soften too. 8. Remember the deep mantle, the slow flows of rock, patient and silent, carrying heat outward over immense spans of time. Nothing rushed, nothing sudden. Let it slip to the edge of your mind. 7. See for a moment the molten outer core, a glowing sea of liquid metal moving in slow spirals, generating currents and fields without pause. A quiet engine that you do not have to tend. Then let it fade. 6. Picture the solid inner core, dense and steady at the center like a calm, unwavering light. Not something you need to reach, only something you know is there, anchoring the motions around it. Let that image dissolve. 5. Return to the magnetosphere. The droplet shape around Earth, compressed on the side facing the sun, stretched into a tail on the night side. A flexible shell that moves and adjusts. Let it drift away. 4. Think briefly of auroras, soft curtains of color at the poles, signs that the shield is doing its work, turning incoming energy into light. A sky that glows gently, not a sky that burns. Let the colors fade. 3. Remember one small ordinary scene from the surface, a person walking or reading or sitting by a window. Nothing dramatic, just life unfolding under the magnetic blanket. Then let that scene pass as well. 2. Feel your own body again, here and now. The weight of you. The contact with the bed or chair. The quiet movements of your breath. You are one of those ordinary scenes resting under the same shield in the same world. 1. There is nothing left you have to do. The story has completed its circle. You have visited the core, the field, the magnetosphere, the contrast with a world without such protections, and the gentle scenes of everyday life beneath the shield. All of that can now sink beneath the surface of your awareness like a stone settling slowly to the bottom of a deep, clear pool. From this point on, you can treat every word as optional. You do not have to listen closely. You do not have to follow any more images. You can let my voice, if it is still playing, become a distant murmur, the way wind in the trees becomes a soft backdrop at night. Notice again how your body feels. Perhaps your hands are heavier now. Perhaps your jaw is looser. Perhaps your breathing has found a slower, more even rhythm. If there is any part of you still holding on, you can imagine sending a little weight there, as if gravity were flowing gently into that area, encouraging it to let go. Your mind may still wander. It may loop back to something from earlier in the day, or revisit a piece of this journey, or drift into images entirely its own. Whatever it does, you do not need to correct it. The shield around Earth continues to function, whether you think about it or not. Your nervous system continues to settle, whether you monitor it or not. Sleep will come when it is ready. You are lying on a planet that has spent billions of years learning how to hold an atmosphere and a field. You are surrounded by systems that exist to maintain balance. You are part of that balance, not apart from it. If you remain awake for a while longer, you can simply continue to notice your breath, the contact with the bed, and the general sense of being cradled within something larger and older than yourself. If sleep begins to gather at the edges of your awareness, you can allow it to move inward, to fill the spaces between thoughts, to gently dim the lights of attention. There is nothing more to understand tonight. There is no next step, no test, no action required. The core will turn. The field will extend. The magnetosphere will shape the solar wind. The sky will hold its air. The ground will hold your weight, and you can let go. You can let go into a darkness that is not empty, but full of quiet support. You can rest inside the layered blankets of gravity air and magnetic presence. You can allow your body to do what it knows how to do, slipping gradually or suddenly into sleep. If you wake later in the night, the same protections will still be in place. The same planet will still be turning. You can always return to this sense of being held, this awareness that you are resting on a world shaped by deep old forces that do not depend on your vigilance. For now, though, you do not have to think about the core or the shield or the sky. You can let everything soften into a simple feeling. You are here. You are safe. You are allowed to rest.